That point, when you have that information and you've got this vast audience that are your constituents at that point, are you going to make a separate analytical judgment as to whether that's important, valid, prioritized? Will you make that at that point?
Yes, I would. I would give my view in the appropriate professional environment. At some point, we would no doubt reach a conclusion within our community. But I have authority and the right on behalf of my secretary to give my view.
And I would just add to that, Commissioner, that the FBI now has a strategic analytic component and ability that we did not have prior to 9/11, which should pick that up. But the extra set of eyes and ears that would also see that would lend to that.
Commissioner Fielding.
Yes, sir.
Whenever the FBI moves electrons from the field to FBI headquarters, in this case the Phoenix EC or electronic communication, TTIC analysts have real-time access to that. We don't have to rely on the FBI to push it to us. We have full visibility into it. Within TTIC, then, that means that FBI analysts, CIA analysts, analysts from the Department of Homeland Security, the Transportation Security Administration, and other entities represented in TTIC would be able to have read that memo, or will read that memo today, and then will discuss it among themselves and then interact with their home organizations as appropriate. As Mr. Pavitt said and Mr. Pistol, then also there are regular meetings throughout the day to discuss the events of the day in terms of what has come in. Regarding the analysis of that, right now within the U.S. government, the TTIC has the primary responsibility for terrorism analysis at the national level. Each of the other elements has responsibility for doing analysis in support of their respective missions and operational requirements. And so just as General Hughes said, that DHS would do its analysis to make sure that its folks within the broad constituencies of DHS are enabled and empowered, they would help to do that within their department. But at a national strategic level, TTIC, representing the partner agencies, does it on behalf of all of them in an integrated, fused fashion.
The joint inquiry explored the extent to which analysts were inexperienced, undertrained, and in some cases unqualified for the responsibilities they were given. At the Counterterrorism Center at the CIA, analysts were a relatively junior group before September 11th, with 3 years experience on the average, in contrast to the 8 years for analysts in the CIA's Directorate of Intelligence. The Director of Terrorism Analysts explained during a closed hearing, quote, "We had some analysts who've been on the terrorism target for some time, but our biggest concentration was people at about the 3 to 4 years of experience. So we had a few senior analysts, a large cadre of very good, very experienced when we hired them. But nevertheless, they hadn't had the 10 years, 15 years on the account that you would want. There's a historical reason for that. In the Counterterrorism Center, when it was founded, people were brought in on a rotational basis and worked there for 2 years. Then they went back on their home office. So you hadn't built up all that skill back on the late 80s and 90s. Starting in about 1997, the Counterterrorism Center had a career service, a nurturing expertise building service. So by 2000, when I arrived in the center, when you had is the new people who had been hired into the career service who were reaching their own, but still in the beginning part of their career, end quote. A January 2002 FBI internal study found that 66% of the FBI's 1,200 intelligence research specialists or analysts were unqualified. The problem was compounded by the fact that newly assigned analysts received little counterterrorism training. As the chief of the FBI's National Security Intelligence Section told the joint inquiry, quote, "While there were no standardized training regimen other than a 2-week basic analytical course, training was available on an ad hoc basis. Guidance was provided by both the unit chiefs of the analytical units and the FBI's Administrative Services Division. The development of a standardized curriculum linked to job skills and career advancement was being planned, but it was never implemented," end quote. A senior Counterterrorism Center supervisor testified at the joint inquiry that the Counterterrorism Center did not have enough analysts with sufficient experience to produce sophisticated, in-depth analysis, in the quantities needed. In the same hearing, the FBI's Deputy Assistant Director for Counterterrorism Analysts testified that FBI analysts had great expertise on investigation, but were not in the position to see the big picture or connect the dots. As a result, the FBI's Counterterrorism Division had great difficulty in producing integrated intelligence assessments that provided early warning of emerging threats. Finally, the chief of the Defense Intelligence Agency's Joint Intelligence Task Force for Combating Terrorism concluded, "We are probably still in the business of describing potentials more than we are able to really render predictive analysis." That testimony reinforces an observation by a DIA senior official with broad experience in counterterrorism that intelligence community analysts largely perform descriptive analysis and interpretative analysis skills have not been encouraged or built into the workforce. Former NSA Director William Odom also focused on training and materials he submitted to the joint inquiry. Quote, "Although the intelligence community system of education and training is extensive, diverse, specialized, and fragmented, it lacks three key elements. First, nowhere is a common doctrinal understanding of intelligence functions and processes documented and taught to all intelligence community management and executive leadership personnel. Second, the teaching of community-wide resources management have been generally neglected. Third, there is no educational emphasis on senior executive leadership or staff training." End quote.